So the home screen is going to look something like this. You'll notice that across the top, there's different product types. There's FEX, which stands for final expense. There's term, and it stands for term insurance. And then there's MedSup. MedSup we're not really getting too much into right now, but as we get more comfortable with these final expense customers, for those of you that have that license, the 215 license, which allows you to sell life and health, you're going to see that the same customer that buys a final expense plan will buy a MedSup from you as well, and allows you to cross-sell your current book of business and kind of earn some pennies from heaven by being able to save your clients money on their Medicare supplement plan as well. All right, so first step when you come in here, you want to make sure you click on FEX, F-E-X, all right? And then there's some other options across the top. You're going to want to click on Customize Carriers. So what this allows you to do is this allows you to check the boxes of the carriers that you want to see quotes for. So we have most of the carriers that are in here. We don't have all of them. And I'm going to send you an email that has a list of the carriers that I want you to have checked initially. So what you'll do, you'll go through. Obviously, if it's yellow, that means it's checked. If it's grayed out, it's not. So you'll go through and check the carriers that you want to show. All right. Again, if it's gray, it's not going to show. Go all the way through. Make sure all those boxes are checked. Now, the second portion down here, this is a feature that allows you to have a link that you could send to a customer if they wanted to quote themselves, or it has the embeddable HTML code. So let's say, for example, you have a website, SpencerSmithLifeInsuranceQuotes.com. You can actually take this code, embed it onto your website, and then they would be able to quote themselves right on your website. So with this subscription, which again is available to you at no cost as being a part of our hierarchy, with your subscription to Insurance Toolkits, you can get that HTML and put that right onto your website so they can quote themselves. And then this is where you would choose the carriers that you want them to be able to see. Now, they wouldn't be able to enroll themselves into a policy without you, but they could certainly check a quote. All right. So again, I'm going to send you a list of the carriers that you want to have checked. And this really allows you to customize which carriers that they'll show up when you run a quote. So when you go into a light version right here, so again, customization is what we just did. You click light. Here's that link that you could potentially send to somebody if they wanted to quote themselves. And here's a preview of the widget that would go on your website using this HTML code. And this is what it would look like on your website. All right. So the same way that you have to set up the carriers that you want for your final expense, you have to do the same thing with term. So you come over here to term, you click that, you click Customize Carriers again, and now you're going to see that there's a different list of products and carriers here. I'll send you a list of products and carriers that you want to have checked. For the most part, just about every single box is going to be checked for the term plan. Again, this is the light version. So if they wanted to quote themselves on a term policy using that link you send them, or for the embeddable HTML on your website, here's the boxes that you would check in order to make sure that you have those carriers shown. Okay. So before we get into a quote here, I want to open it up to you guys for a second. Does anybody have a question about setting up the carriers that you want to have displayed? Okay, pretty straightforward there. Obviously, if anything comes up, feel free to raise your hand or put something in the chat box here. All right, so going back, as I mentioned, they do have real-time support. You can click this little button, you put your email in here, you click start the chat, and then somebody will begin chatting with you, usually within a couple minutes, to give you some additional support in real time. So super user-friendly there. This also comes with a CRM feature where once you have a sale, you can input them into this and keep track of their the policy that they chose, the premium that they have, their phone number, their email, and so forth, so that you have the ability to monitor your clients. Now, you're going to see in further demos that we have another option for you to keep track of your clients, but this is certainly one feature you can use as well. You can see that I've already enrolled Tom Brady, so please don't solicit him. He's my client. Betty White, sadly, nobody's going to be able to solicit her anymore. She's already cashed in on her policy. God bless her. One of our golden girls. She will be missed. Clients are here. This is where you would add one. You click this little plus sign. If you wanted to upload an Excel file of other clients that you've had in the past and you want to have it in here, you can do that very easy through the upload feature. If you wanted to download all of your clients to input them into a different CRM or just have them offline so that you can hang on to that information no matter what, you're able to do that as well. Any questions about that, or if that becomes confusing, boom, chat box right here. They'll send you screenshots. They'll give you information on exactly how to do that, but it's pretty straightforward. There's also a calendar as well. If you want to set appointments in here to organize yourself, you can schedule an appointment, put all their information in there, save the event, it'll show up here. So just some nice, easy, simple features. These are just added benefits. Realistically, we're really using this software for the universal quoting and embedded underwriting features, but having this CRM essentially thrown in as an add-on can be invaluable for you if you choose to use it. It's really up to you. Your account information will be here. So if you want to update your email, update this information, change your password, and so forth, you're able to do that. You'll want to have the telesales agent box checked. Make sure you go ahead and do that as well. All right, so we'll get back to this portion. Let's go ahead and let's do a quote. Now you'll see that I've got information left over in here, right? So I could go through and I could delete all this and I could X all this out, or I could just very simply scroll down, click clear fields. Boom. Now we have a whole fresh new quote that we can do. So something to be sure that you're checking is if you're doing a final expense quote, make sure final expense is checked. If you want a term quote, click term. All right. I'd say that's a miscue that a lot of new agents have that can be a little bit frustrating. Obviously, it's not the end of the world. But just be mindful if you're looking at a final expense customer, click final expense. If we're doing a term policy, click term. All right, so let's start with final expense. And we're going through, the process with the client here. We're asking how much coverage they're looking for. If they don't necessarily know how much coverage they're looking for, we could just put a premium in here. But let's say for the purposes of this example, they say they're looking for $20,000 worth of coverage. You're going to want to start with level here as opposed to graded, guaranteed, or limited pay. When you click level here, once you input their medications and their prescriptions, if they don't qualify for level and they need to get a graded policy or they need to get a guaranteed issue policy, your results are automatically going to show those to you. So I would more or less always leave this as level. Then obviously the gender, whether it's male or female, what state they're in, the birthday. So for the purposes here, let's just do January 1st, 1952. It's going to tell you age 70. I would just double check that with the client. So, what's your date of birth? Oh, it's January 1st, 1952. Okay, perfect. Let me just input that. All right. And just to verify, you're currently 70 years of age. Is that correct? Wonderful, wonderful. Okay. Now, you're going to want to ask the approximate height and weight of your client or the lead or the prospect. It says optional here. Again, realistically, I wish they would remove that. It's really not optional. Most of these carriers are going to have a height and weight chart, and you want to make sure that you put their height and weight in there so that if they're outside of that chart, that option is not displayed here for you. So again, the huge benefit of this universal quoting tool is you're going to be able to quote all your carriers in one shot. You're going to be able to put height and weight in. You're going to be able to put medications, pre-existing conditions in there. And it's going to automatically filter out the carriers they don't qualify for. So you don't have to spend 10 minutes, 20 minutes going through all the different carriers and checking the weight charts and checking the pre-existing conditions. It's going to do that for you automatically. So it takes a lot of the guesswork out of the process and really speeds things up, makes it more convenient for the client, makes you sound professional that you've got this, underwriting tool and this integrated universal quoting system, and that you're able to check everything for them very quickly. All right, so let's say for the purposes of this example, 5, 4, 175. A nicotine use, obviously, if they're a tobacco user or they're using vapes and so forth, that would fall under other nicotine products. Payment type. So again, you'll see when we go through your qualification script, we're going to ask them if they have a valid checking or savings account in the United States. That's really important. They don't have a valid checking or savings account, and some people won't. If they don't have one, then there's going to be certain carriers that are going to be canceled off the list right out the gate because they only operate using a routing and account number. They only operate with a bank draft. They only operate with an electronic funds transfer. Now, others, they'll take these direct express cards. For those of you who don't know what that is, essentially every month when they receive their Social Security benefit, because they don't have a bank account, Social Security just auto loads their monthly benefit onto essentially like a debit card. It's called a direct express card. Essentially what it is a debit card. So that money gets preloaded onto that card for them every single month, and then they pay all their bills off that card. So some carriers do accept that. Some carriers do accept credit and debit cards. So we're going to ask that question in the beginning. We're going to put some salesmanship on there. We're going to be as soft and as gentle as possible. Normally we don't want to talk too much about money. Within the first few minutes of a phone call, we want to build some rapport and build some trust. But you'll see that it's worded in a way that makes a lot of sense for going over that with these people, because we need that information to give them an accurate quote. It doesn't matter what you qualify for. If you don't have a bank account, Mutual of Omaha is not going to do business with you. Have to have a bank account. Okay. All right. So, once we kind of get that information, and you'll find that as you're going through your script and going through your process, it won't necessarily be in this exact order. You might be talking about pre-existing conditions and medications before you get into the bank draft, but you get the idea. You're going to be right here. You're going to be putting this information in. So if I'm asking you, at this point, ma'am, we need to start to build a little bit of a health profile for you. So I'm going to ask you some medical questions and try to determine, which options you're going to have and which policies you're going to qualify for and what ratings and so forth. So I'm going to need to know a little bit about the medications that you're currently taking and pre-existing conditions that you have. So right now, do you have any pre-existing medical conditions that you're receiving treatment for, medications, going to see the doctor and so forth? Any pre-existing conditions? Yes, I do. I have high blood pressure. Okay. Now, for your high blood pressure, I'm just going to go ahead and put that in. A lot of times people are using medications like lisinopril or amlodipine. Are you using a medication to control that? Yes, I do take a medication. I use lisinopril. Okay, great. That's common. Now, if they take a medication, that would be considered controlled. If they don't take a medication for it, that would be considered uncontrolled, and that would be bad news. If there's a doctor prescribing them high blood pressure medication and they're not taking it, the insurance company would not look favorably upon that. So what we want is, if they do have that pre-existing condition, we want them to be taking a medication, because that's helping control it for them, and that's helping their health. So high blood pressure controlled means they're taking a medication. Uncontrolled means they're not taking medication for it. All right. Date of last treatment. So again, most people, they're taking a blood pressure pill every single day. Two of the most common are going to be lisinopril and amlodipine. So date of last treatment would be today, because they probably took it today. Finish. All right. Any other pre-existing conditions? Well, I also have high cholesterol. Okay. You're going to type that in. Cholesterol. Going to click that. Date of last treatment. Again, most people are taking a medication for that every single day. The most common one's going to be simvastatin. So when they say they have high cholesterol, I'm going to say, okay, and what are you using to treat that? Do you take simvastatin every single day? And they're going to say, actually, yes. How'd you know that? Okay, been doing this a long time, man. You're going to have little lines like that, little chuckles here and there. Um, so date of last treatment, April 20th, 2022. Finish. All right. Any other pre-existing conditions that you have? Yes, I'm actually a diabetic. Okay. Are you using insulin or are you just using a pill? I just use a pill. Okay. Are you using metformin for that? Yes, I am. Goodness, how do you know this stuff? Well, man, listen, I've been doing this for a long, 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 long time. Going on 3 days now. So I know everything. All right, diabetes. You'll be typing that in. And guys, in the beginning, it might be difficult to be quoting and pitching at the same time. But ultimately, as you get more comfortable, you're going to know this script as well as you're not even going to have to think about it. You're going to do it like it's breathing. It just happens automatically. And ultimately, I'm asking the questions. I'm trying to get all this information in on here so that by the time they're, done providing the information, I'm already ready to get into my presentation and my pitch and my close. All right. So diabetes, no complications, with complications, had an amputation. So with complications, for the purposes of this example, I'm going to click on that one. These would be considered complications. So if they have diabetes, have they ever gone into a diabetic coma? Do they have nephropathy, neuropathy, retinopathy? Have they ever had insulin shock? So these are a follow-up question that you'd want to ask. Okay, you're a diabetic. Do you have any complications with your diabetes? And they're going to say, more than likely, they're going to say, what's that mean? You're going to say, okay, have you ever experienced a diabetic coma? Do you have neuropathy, nephropathy, retinopathy? You ever gone into insulin shock, anything along those lines? Most of the time, it's going to be no. If there's going to be a yes here, it's going to be right here, which is neuropathy. Okay, diabetic neuropathy is very common. It's kind of like where they have like what feels like pins and needles in their toes, and they take a medication for that for nerve pain. And sometimes it gets so bad, it goes into amputation. So sometimes people lose their feet, their legs due to diabetes. That's why diabetes is so dangerous. Okay, so, but a lot of times, you ask them, okay, you're a diabetic. Do you have any complications? No, I don't think so. Okay, so no retinopathy, no neuropathy, no insulin shock, no coma, never had an amputation. No, nothing like that. I just take a pill and I'm fine. Okay, great. So diabetes, no complications. Date of last treatment, again, it's probably going to be today. Next. Date of diagnosis. Okay, and when did you get diagnosed with that? I'm not really sure. Okay, would you say it's been a year, 2 years, 5 years? Oh, well, yeah, it's been probably 5 years. Okay, great. 5 years, perfect. And you said you don't use any insulin, right? Wonderful. Perfect. So now we've got the blood pressure, we've got the cholesterol, we've got the diabetes. The medications have to go in here. So lisinopril, this one's very common. It's for high blood pressure. So this is a good talking point right here. So lisinopril, you see that there's multiple different things they could be taking it for, right? They could be using it for congestive heart failure. They could use it after a heart attack to prevent another one, or they could just be using it for something as simple as high blood pressure. So that's an important distinction, because sometimes you're going to find that these dual purpose medications, they can slow down the underwriting process, because they can require a follow-up from the underwriter, like you put on the application that this person's using lisinopril, or maybe you didn't put it on the application, but they ran a prescription check, and they'll ask you, now, what are they using that for? Is it for high blood pressure, congestive heart? Oh no, it's just for high blood pressure. That's not so serious. Congestive heart failure, heart attack, now the underwriter might be getting a little bit nervous that this person's too high risk, and that can be moved to a less favorable underwriting rating. Okay, date of last fill, currently taking. Date of first fill, when did you get diagnosed with that? Was it around the time of the diabetes? Yes, it was. Okay, finish. All right, for the cholesterol, we said it was simvastatin. Okay, perfect. It's only got one use. They're taking it now, finish. And then for the diabetes, they're using metformin, right? They said no complications. currently taking. Date of first fill was when it was diagnosed back in 2017, again, about 5 years ago. Okay, so now we have all of the information to give them an accurate quote. All right, so at this point, all we're going to do is click Get Quote. All right, and then the system's going to spit out the carriers that would offer this person coverage based upon their pre-existing conditions. It's going to tell you what the monthly premium would be. It's going to tell you the name of the product. Okay, although they're all final expense plans, and each carrier has their own name. Immediate Solutions, the name for Transamerica. The CVS product, which again, this is Aetna. It's called the Ascendo product. Foresters is called Plan Right. And then after the name of the product is the underwriting rating. So preferred. Preferred, again, as we went over, that's the same thing as level. Level, preferred, tomato, tomato. So preferred is going to have that immediate death benefit. Okay, so there's no waiting period. It's going to be the lowest possible rate that somebody qualifies for. So based upon their age, based upon their location, based upon how much coverage they're looking for, that's the best price. Transamerica. Aetna would be number 2. Foresters number 3. Mutual of Omaha number 4. All right, so be mindful of something. You are going to start to develop a relationship with these carriers. Okay, so the experience that the client has sometimes can be just as important or more than the premium that they're paying. For example, you might be willing to pay more for convenience in certain situations. I could take the bus to go to the airport, or I could take a taxi to go to the airport. Both options are going to get me from point A to point B, but certainly taking a taxi is going to be more convenient, right? And I'm going to get there a lot faster. Although the bus is going to be a heck of a lot cheaper. But sometimes for convenience, depending on the situation, I'm willing to pay more for that. And I can tell you that sometimes that's the case here with the carriers. Although Transamerica is the best price, you might find that the underwriting department doesn't necessarily move as quickly as the Mutual of Omaha underwriting department or the Foresters underwriting department. You're going to have to start to, again, just figure out which carriers you like working with the best and find out which process is most conducive for you. And then you might be able to sell the value of, hey, although the lowest price in your area is with Transamerica, I tend to recommend Mutual of Omaha just because all my clients have such a great customer service experience with them. The underwriting department gives them a nice, quick, easy underwriting decision. So you find out very quickly whether or not you're approved. They get the policy out to you really fast. There's just different things about each carrier that kind of gives them an edge. So you can certainly try to go for the lowest price every single time. I think you might find that certain carriers, one that I'm highlighting here being Mutual of Omaha, they're just very easy to work with. You get your commission quickly. They get you an underwriting decision quickly. If there's any issues, they're very agent friendly and so forth. So Transamerica's got the best rate here, and you're certainly going to have that contract. You'll be able to offer that. It's just that as you go through here and again start to build relationships with these carriers and their agent support, there might be another one that you find you like working with more, and you might find yourself trying to sell that value to a client to spend a little bit more a month so that they can have the best customer experience possible. Okay. The other thing too is, you might offer this product. Maybe there's something that this client doesn't tell you. You asked them what their pre-existing conditions were. You asked them what medications, and they failed to volunteer some information to you. You'll find that to be the case. Sadly, not everyone's going to be completely honest with you about their medical history, and realistically, it's not helping them because the underwriters are going to check their prescription history, they're going to check their MIB report, and at the end of the day, these companies are usually pretty good about getting the full picture of somebody's medical profile, and they will turn people down that you're scratching your head like, why would this person get turned away? And then you come to find out that this person has no legs. Yep, they're a diabetic. Those legs got amputated, and they just didn't tell you about it, either A, because they thought that would prevent them from getting approved, or B, they were just embarrassed to tell you. And that's part of the business. This is sensitive information that we're asking about when it comes to health conditions. And so you have to understand and expect that in some cases, they're not necessarily going to be truthful with you. And so sometimes it takes a submission to a carrier and then getting feedback from the carrier for you to find out, okay, here's what's actually going on with this person. Now I can input all of their information correctly, and now I can see what they really qualify for. Okay, so I would be lying if I said that everyone's going to be fully transparent and honest with you. They're not. So, you'll find out one way or another after submitting to the underwriting department. But you can see they've got a lot of options here. And even down here at the bottom are going to start to show you things other than the level and the preferred. They're going to show you the guaranteed. So remember, this policy, anybody can qualify for this, regardless of any pre-existing conditions. The difference is it's going to be a graded benefit. So there's going to be a 2-year waiting period before the full face amount is payable. So this is a $20,000 face amount for $232 a month. If the insured passes away during the first 24 months, essentially any premiums paid would be returned to the beneficiary plus 10%. Okay, so the beneficiary would get all of the premiums paid plus 10% as the payout. Okay. But, as you'll see, they got a lot of great options here. You're going to be able to be very competitive. I mean, the difference between a guaranteed issue option at $232 and, an underwritten at $135 or $142 or $145, that's huge. That's a huge, huge savings. So we never, ever want to go the guaranteed issue route until we've exhausted all other options. I mean, if we start to put things in here like, the C word, they've got something like that going on. And maybe this was, last year. Right? Now we've got cancer on the medical list. Click get quote. Look what's left. That's the only option they're going to be able to get. So the good news is you're always going to have an option for somebody. But again, you want to be sure that this is your last resort. Really, really your last resort. And you can see they tell you why these options aren't showing up for you, which is awesome. Awesome. If you're like, man, why am I not seeing prosperity here? Oh, if current cancer diagnosed within 2 years, decline. Got it. Foresters, why is this excluded? If ever treated for diabetes, decline. Right? Plan right. This is their final expense plan. If ever treated for cancer, ever, not just 2 years, ever. Right? So there's good notes down here that kind of tell you about the other carriers. Now, I want to show you something that's kind of cool that can be useful. So let's remove that again. So let's say that we decide we're going to be taking a look at Mutual of Omaha, right? So there's this comparison tool, because now maybe we don't necessarily just want to know what it costs for $20,000 with Mutual of Omaha. Maybe we want to know what $10,000 costs as well as a comparison, and $30,000. Right? So once we identify, okay, Mutual of Omaha is who we're going to want to go with, let's see what the differences in benefit amounts are. So we're going to have Mutual of Omaha here. We could check on somebody else if we wanted to, but Living Promise, this is the final expense plan. Coverage type, again, level. Compare quotes. They transferred all that information over for us, so you don't have to input that again. All right, so now we know it's $74 a month for $10,000, $146 for the 20, $217 for the 30. Okay, and they even tell you oh, if you want to add on the accidental death benefit rider, this is how much it would be. So if you're applying for the level, you can add on an accidental death benefit rider. It looks like for about an additional $9. And whatever the face amount is, the accidental death benefit will match that. So for $155 a month, they would get $40,000 if the result of their death was due to an accident. Okay, so for an extra, essentially $9 a month, they could double their face amount if this is what happens. Okay. So certainly in some cases, people want more coverage than essentially they can really afford. You could get them up to $20,000 in coverage with the accidental death benefit rider at $79 a month. So that's, to give some people some more value. If really they're so stuck on having $20,000 worth of coverage, but they just can't swing the 146, here's an angle you could work. Well, listen, you're healthy. If you're to pass away soon, chances are it's not going to be due to a health condition. It might be due to an accident, right? So I can, in essence, get you $20,000 worth of coverage if it's as a result of an accident for only $79 a month. How does that sound? Right? So present angles. You have to be able to find solutions for people. They have wants, they have needs, and their budget isn't always where it needs to be in order to satisfy their specific wants. So you have to be creative in some cases as an agent and find other ways, to meet them halfway on what they're looking for and stick within a budget that makes sense for them. Okay. All right. So that's really the fundamental breakdown and overview of how this works. One last thing I want to show you is that it's super convenient that once you do decide, hey, listen, we're going to go with Mutual of Omaha, you can click the eApp button and it's going to bring you to the back-end login for Mutual of Omaha. So remember that although we are quoting everything here in the universal quoting system, every carrier still has their own application that you have to do. And what's awesome is on your final expense quick reference sheet on the carrier overview, if you scroll on over to the right, you'll see how to complete the application on video for the majority of the carriers. So you can watch somebody fill out the e-application so that you're familiar with exactly how that process works. Okay. All right, so that's really the conclusion of the training on the quoting tool. So what I'd like to do right now before we move on to the next thing is just open up some Q&A on that. So guys, feel free. What questions do you have? I'll spend an extra couple minutes going over, whatever topic or talking point you have.
Spencer, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Okay, so when we're to this point now, and we've asked all the questions and are giving quotes, so have we already passed all the what I'm looking for, MIB checks, and is this a guarantee to them they're going to get the policy, or does it still have to go through underwriting?
Yep. So this is all happening, very quickly. We haven't actually submitted the application over to the carrier yet. So we're essentially in an information gathering phase where we're, going through an interview process, asking them about their medical history, asking them about their prescriptions. We're inputting it into this quoting tool. And then once we've inputted all this information and we scroll down here, that's when we're going to start to do, the explanation of the pricing. And once we get a price agreement, now we're going to move on over to the actual application that the carrier has. And that application is going to ask additional questions along the lines of, has this happened in the last 2 years? Has this happened in the last 2 years? Has this ever happened? Are you currently confined to a wheelchair? They're going to ask a lot of specific carrier questions. And as long as they're able to answer no to all those medical questions, we'll be able to submit the application over to the underwriting department. And usually we'll get an underwriting decision from carriers like Mutual of Omaha within about 24 to 48 hours. And that's when the insurance company is going to take the time to review the information that you've input on the application, to review the MIB report, and to review the prescription history. And then based upon that information, that's when they're going to give you an underwriting decision, you and the client, on whether or not
Gotcha.
that person is actually able to qualify for the program or not. So everything that we just went over here on this quoting tool, it's really, it's a pre-qualification for us, that it makes sense for us to spend our time submitting an application.
Right.
This by no means is, indicative of an actual approval. This is just essentially our pre-qualification questions and our pre-qualification process to help guide us on where to submit this piece of business to.
Very good.
Totally unofficial.
All right. Thank you.
Anybody have anything else? When it comes to quoting and selling, it's the best tool I've ever used. There's a few other programs out there. They tend to put too much information in there. It's cluttered. It looks like it was built back in 1992 for like a DOS computer. I mean, this is really brought this quoting process and underwriting process into the 21st century. So really, really proud of what these guys at Assurance Toolkits have done. This program, I think at the street price, like if you just went out and you wanted an account, not being in our hierarchy, it's like $60 a month. Everybody in our hierarchy gets access to this tool unlimited for no cost. So you'll have this tool to use. Okay, so last chance. Any questions about this before we move on to the next demo? Okay, perfect. All right. Just give me 1 second. Perfect.